Whew. Sigh of relief. Boise State wins the game. Down 17 points, roars back, second half, holds San Jose State scoreless, comes back, wins the game 35-27. Remember, last week, Boise State up 17, ends up losing the game. Complete reversal this game. There are still a lot of questions to be answered, and in a lot of ways, this almost, even though we're reviewing a win, in a lot of ways, based on how this offense performed, you cannot feel confident going forward through the rest of the season. Offensively, this almost feels like a loss. Boise State doing enough to get the win, 2-0 in Mountain West. But this offensive system has got to leave fans continuing to scratch their head. We're going to talk about the offense. We're going to look at what Boise State did and if any questions were answered about this quarterback situation or how this offense is going to be handled. We'll look at the defense and the special teams. We'll grade all three of those units, and we'll also look at how Boise State handled my three keys to the game. And we'll have a discussion about what this means for Andy Avalos' future. Definitely in question with a 2-3 start after the Memphis loss. What has this game done, if anything, to impact that? Wait around to the end of the video for that very, very important discussion. But getting right into this one, Boise State wins this game 35-27. Offensively, if you just woke up, looked at the game, or just pulled up the game sheet and looked at it, you would think, hey, this was a pretty good performance by Boise State. 491 yards of offense, 229 yards passing, 262 yards rushing. However, if you were watching this game and you check the first half stats, completely different story. Only 252 yards of offense in the first half, 176 yards passing, most of that on one long pass to McAllister. Other than that, only 76 yards rushing. Ashton Jeanty fumbled the ball twice. Taylor Green only had 5 yards rushing in the first half, and the offense was a complete nightmare, a complete disaster. Taylor Green starts the ball, but Maddox Matson and Taylor Green were swapping in and out throughout the game, sometimes mid-drive situationally, and that was talked about in the press conference. Bush Hamdan said they were going to do that. I was really hoping that he was bluffing, and he, to the absolute dismay of all fans, was not. Boise State, if they lost yardage on first down or if they got into a third and long situation, would trot out Maddox Matson cold off the bench to try and throw the ball. They got lucky a few times because he was able to make some moves with his legs, but for the vast majority of those plays, they did not work out very well. And Maddox Matson is the player that he is. He was able to make some things happen, but Boise State's coaches caused multiple mistakes in the first half. No stability at all, and by coaches, I'm primarily indicating Andy Avalos on this one. Bush Hamdan, it's his offense, but Andy Avalos is the head coach. An offensive coordinator very rarely is going to make a decision to rotate these quarterbacks like this. When you see quarterbacks coming in and out of the game, that primarily points towards the head coach making important decisions like that. Andy Avalos directly caused the turnovers in the first half. There's no stability there. When there's no stability at the quarterback position, it impacts the rest of the team. We saw that in the defense. The whole team seemed completely off phase. The defense couldn't figure themselves out. They seemed out of it. The quarterback play was struggling regardless of who was in. You were seeing the worst version of both quarterbacks because neither could develop consistency in the game. Maddox Matson comes out, I believe on the first or second drive, comes out and throws an interception right away because he's not settled in. He is coming into a situational play where the defense has a pretty good idea of what he's going to do, and he doesn't have any chemistry developed throughout the game with the wide receivers, and he's been called off the bench to make a throw, and that is the worst case scenario for quarterback, and Boise State has now incorporated that as a core element into their offense. Absolutely mind-blowing that they have gone with this decision. Makes absolutely zero sense, and we saw the effects. That interception resulted in a touchdown for San Jose State. Ashton Jeanty, mostly reliable, yes. Some major hiccups versus North Dakota. But throughout the rest of the games, mostly reliable. He has 2 fumbles in the first half. A big reason for that is, one, the instability at the quarterback position causes all of the pressure to be on him. He feels like he has got to fight for every single inch. He's already great at breaking yardage. He's always great at fighting for that extra yards. But he's got to feel right now like he has got to make everything happen because the quarterback position is not getting it done. And there's no guarantee it's going to. So he has to feel, at least here in the first half, that he is the offense for this Boise State team. And if he doesn't break that last fourth tackle, for a touchdown, who knows how the drive's going to end up. There's more pressure on him to fight longer than he should and focus more on getting yards than necessarily focusing on the other aspects of being a running back like the ball security. However, the second point, and what I really believe caused those fumbles, was the changing of the mesh point. When you have a 6'6" quarterback handing off to a running back, that is going to be a much different mesh point than when you have a 5'10" leaning towards the 5'9" of the height spectrum. He's about my height. When standing next to each other, we were right there at about the same height. I'm 5'9.5". So when you have a 5'10" leaning towards 5'9" compared to a 6'6" quarterback, there's going to be a massive difference, not just in the way those quarterbacks hand off, but in where the ball is physically placed in the handoff. And that is the handoff, the mesh point, that's where everything starts. You need to have a good, clean handoff, consistency at the mesh point to develop ball security throughout. Ball security is majorly impacted by the handoff itself. Well, there weren't any fumbles at the mesh point. I believe that the fumbles that resulted after the handoff were indirectly contributed to that mix-up in the quarterbacks moving in and out of the game. Boise State fumbles ball twice. Ashton Denny fumbles ball twice in the first half. Both of those fumbles result in touchdowns. That is directly on Andy Avalos for this horrible, absolutely horrible decision to rotate quarterbacks. When I laid out what the offense might do for Boise State, I laid out 3 possible scenarios. I said what they should do but won't do, which is change the offense to fit Taylor Green's system and keep him as their starting quarterback. I said they wouldn't do that, and they didn't. I said what they might do and should do, which was a second option, which was start the quarterback that best fits into your system, which is Maddox Matson, and then use Taylor Green as a situational player dependent on what works to his strengths. So if you have a 3rd and 1 and you want to have a little bit more running option, you move him out there. Not every 3rd and 1 because you don't want to be predictable, but you have some plays for him like you traditionally do with a running quarterback to come out and do something in the game. But the primary is Maddox Matson. What I thought Boise State would do is exactly what they did do, which was start Taylor Green, and as soon as someone made a mistake, boom, new quarterback out there. As soon as they're in a long passing situation, Maddox Matson out for the pass. Using Maddox Matson as the situational quarterback. You should never, ever, ever use your passing quarterback as the situational player because they're going to come off cold. It is so hard to come off cold and throw a pass when you have not been out there on the game the snaps before, developing that consistency and rhythm with the offense. But also, the defense is going to be better prepared for you because they know what's coming up. They know you're planning on going through with a pass. So the defense is going to be better prepared for a passing situation, which is going to make it all the more harder for you to actually be able to go out and complete that. That is what that's what you saw with Boise State. You saw drop balls from Boise State, either whether it's on the wide receiver or the quarterback. But when you're mixing quarterbacks out there, each quarterback throws the ball a little bit differently, and that's going to impact how the wide receiver catches it. You saw the offense struggling as a whole. You saw the running game faltering. You saw fumbles from Ashton Denny. You saw interceptions from Maddox Matson, who prior to this has been perfect on the season. An absolute abysmal mess. Boise State is in major, major trouble coming into the second half. The coaches have no idea what's going on or what they should be doing. They're just throwing players at the situation and hoping something sticks. If Taylor Green has a bad play, Maddox Matson comes out there. If Maddox Matson has a bad play, Taylor Green comes out there. Neither quarterback has stability in the system. They're looking over the shoulder. They have no idea who's going to be on the field next. It's an absolute train wreck. In the second half, we see more of the same. Boise State comes in with that system. They're just throwing players at the wall and hoping that somebody sticks. And luckily, so lucky for this coaching staff, they come out with Maddox Matson. He gets sacked. They turns over that drive. They have to punt the ball. Green comes out the second play. Again, they're just throwing players at the drives and hoping that somebody will develop something, even though they're not giving them the consistency and time to develop into the system. Maddox Matson, first drive, doesn't go anywhere, has a nice run, and then sacked, and then they have to punt. Next drive, Green comes out there. What's going to happen now? Well, luckily for Boise State, so lucky, and this is not on the coaches. Again, the coaches are doing the same exact thing they did in the first half. The same exact mindset that started the first half and went through that first half is starting the second half. However, so luckily for them, Ashton Denny has a huge run. Ashton Genty takes off on a massive run, develops momentum. The offense gets going. Taylor Green then comes back. Broken play because, again, they're being rotated in and out. There's no consistency developed. He's the running back or Taylor Green. One of them is in the wrong position. The ball doesn't get handed off, or at least doesn't get faked as it's supposed to be. It's a broken play. Taylor Green, because he's the athlete that he is able to make it in for a touchdown. And now, boom, you have momentum on your side. Taylor Green did an incredible, based on the way that this team has treated him, based on the lack of confidence shown in him by the coaching staff, to come out in the second half and perform the way that he did is absolutely incredible. The way Ashton Genty came out in the second half after the mistakes made in the first half, which, yes, I think that the coaching staff directly contributed to him making those mistakes. But again, those mistakes are also on him. He comes out in the second half and has a flawless performance. So Ashton Genty and Taylor Green taking over the second half and being the players that we know they have the potential to be, despite their circumstances, is what won this game for Boise State offensively. Ashton Genty, only 34 yards rushing, 2 fumbles in the first half. Overall in the game, 24 carries for 167 yards, has over 130 yards rushing in the second half, and that sparked this Boise State offense. Taylor Green now is staying in the game for much longer drives. He is now becoming the clear go-to quarterback. There's now stability in the offense, and you start seeing Boise State going down and completing drives. Taylor Green completing passes, a deep pass to Eric McAllister, a little bit underthrown, to be expected when you haven't developed any timing with your receivers because you haven't been out there consistently and you haven't been called on to be the passing quarterback. A little bit underthrown. Eric McAllister luckily gets under there, makes the catch. He had an incredible game, and you start to see this Boise State offense get rolling. And I actually went out and tweeted and went, wow, great adjustments. Boise State moving away from the 2 quarterback system. Thank goodness, came to their senses. And then Boise State back out there on a 2nd and long. Maddox Madsen comes back out for Boise State. And coaches have clearly not learned anything from those first 2 great drives of the second half. The coaches are still running this system. And I am absolutely terrified that because Boise State won this game, it is going to validate in their minds this horrendous offensive system that has no potential of leading Boise State to a Mountain West championship game. This offensive system versus a more consistent team, San Jose State, I said would be a tough team to beat, and they were. And they performed well in the first half, but they were not good at making the adjustments. Boise State is going to play Wyoming, who just beat Fresno State. They're going to play Fresno State, who's still good. They're going to play Air Force. Those teams are not going to be forgiving. They're not going to allow you to make those adjustments. This offensive system does not work. Hopefully the coaches go back and look at the offense that actually happened on the field, not the overall circumstance, but what actually worked, and see that what actually works is running an offensive system that works to Taylor Green's strengths. When Taylor Green was out there, that's what you saw. Long runs for Ashton Genty, Taylor Green being allowed to use his legs, only 5 yards rushing in the first half, ended the game with 40 yards rushing overall. A very significant improvement overall with some long scrambles, and he was definitely much more willing to and being allowed to use his legs more effectively there in the second half. Boise State, yes, they have a great backup in Maddox Madsen. And to tell you the truth, I think either of these quarterbacks could have won this game by a much larger margin than ended up happening if they had been given the chance to start by themselves. I think you see a quarterback system where Taylor Green comes out and plays the whole game, Boise State wins. If you come out and see Maddox Madsen come out and play the whole game, especially considering this offense is attuned more directly to his play style, you see Boise State come out and win. You don't see them get down by that massive deficit. You don't see all the mistakes in the first half if you come out with a clear-cut starter. A little preview for the keys to the game for next week's game is going to be get a clear-cut starter. Do not for the next game versus Colorado State is clear-cut starter. You have to pick one. This system does not work for Boise State. Again, they got lucky, but still making mistakes. Still making mistakes by putting in Maddox Madsen in situations where he's not ready to play. Final drive of the game. Boise State's got the interception. They're trying to ice the clock. It's 3rd and some yardage. They put Maddox Madsen out there. What happens? Fumbled snap because there's no consistency. Forget consistency between all the other offensive players. There's no consistency between the center and the quarterback. I am absolutely mind-boggled by the decision-making by Andy Avalos to go with this offensive system, not the offensive play calling. The offensive play calling throughout the game was solid, as it has been all season. But to go with this two-quarterback system that has never worked in all of college football. Some people are going to comment and say, oh, two-quarterback systems have worked. What about Brett Rippon and Montel Cozart? Yes, when your primary quarterback is the passing quarterback and you have a second quarterback who's a runner who you rotate situationally, yes, that works. But when your primary quarterback is the running quarterback and you are putting your passer out there situationally, I challenge anybody to give me a scenario in modern football. So I'm not talking about when we were wearing, leather helmets and the forward pass had just been developed. In modern football, where that situation has worked at a high level of play. I'm talking, 10 plus win teams that have gone with that situational quarterback play. It does not work. Boise State got incredibly lucky that Taylor Green was able to come out and perform the way he did despite the offense, and Ashton Jeanty was able to correct, recalibrate, and have an explosive second half. Without those two players doing what they did, despite the coaching staff actively trying to hold Taylor Green back by rotating in secondary quarterbacks that put him off of his game, despite everything thrown at them, Boise State and Ashton Jeanty physically and metaphorically able to hurdle over those roadblocks. Both those, Taylor Green had an incredible hurdle over a defender, and Ashton Jeanty on fourth down had an amazing hurdle over a defender. Incredible athletes on the field. Despite both of those players being absolutely held back by their own coaching staff, were able to take this game over and get the win for Boise State. Overall grade is going to be a B+, because Boise State put up almost 500 yards of offense. But the majority of those yards came through the running game in the second half, because Ashton Jeanty was able to take this game over in a large part because of the more consistent quarterback play, with Taylor Green getting the majority of the second half reps. More consistent quarterback play means more consistent offense overall, more of a more consistent launching pad for Ashton Jeanty to do what he did in the second half. The mistakes, not every mistake in a game is on the coach and all the success is on the players. It's not that simple. But in this game specifically, in this matchup, and I'm not a negative person. If you've watched my other game reviews, my game previews, my series overall coming into this, up until the Memphis game, I was doing everything I could to stay with this coaching staff. I was making excuses for them. I was looking at the bigger picture. I was really, really trying to pull out the positives and say there's still hope here. The Memphis game, that the terrible decision making by Andy Avalos directly in that fourth down attempt on the field goal, to choose to go for the field goal when the fourth down unit was ready to go, and the continued poor decision making to make the worst. This was probably the hardest game I've ever had to watch as a Boise State fan. I am counting our losses. This was a game that we got lucky to win it because players took over and opposing teams made mistakes. This was not a game where the coaching staff, specifically talking about Andy Avalos, came in with a solid game plan, played competitively, and got Boise State a win. This is not a redeeming game in any way for Andy Avalos. In fact, after this game, I have even less faith in him as the head coach of this program than after I did after the Memphis game. And again, I've not been on the boot Andy Avalos train, and I have not been a person that's been looking at this season negatively. So when you see me talking about these things, it's because I have identified a clear problem that is backed up through the last two games of absolute solid evidence that this coaching staff is over their head and making decisions that should not be made by any coaching staff, and especially not a Boise State team, which we should be the elites in the group of five and among the elites in college football. This is not to the Boise State level, and this type of decision making to go with this form of quarterback play is not decision making that you should see from any college coach at the FBS level. Absolutely mind-blowing. B+ performance overall because offense was able to do what they did in the second half. But that is not And again, I emphasize, not because of anything the offensive coaching staff did to adjust. It's just because they put Taylor Green out there with their random throw players at the wall system that they were running, and Taylor Green was able, and Ashton Jeanty and Taylor Green were able to do something that allowed them to stay on the field and continue to have success. If they had gone out 3 and out, you'd have seen Maddox Madsen back out there again in the continual rotation until something worked. That is not coaching. That is not coaching, just throwing players out there and hoping that something works. Moving on to the defense. Defensive performance in the first half, absolutely abysmal. Boise State gives up 27 points. They give up 319 yards of offense overall. Nothing's working. They can't stop the pass. They can't stop the run. They can't stop Cordero when he rolls out. That was a problem all game, but especially in the first half. San Jose State is on a roll. They score off of all 3 turnovers. Boise State is able to hold San Jose State to 2 field goals, including one inside the red zone after a long screen pass that was like 60-plus yards that got San Jose State multiple broken tackles all the way down inside the red zone. Boise State stiffens up and is able to hold San Jose State to a field goal. Boise State winning this game by only 8 points. Those 2 field goals coming in key to keep San Jose State from a position where they might have had a possibility to go for something down the line and make a big play and come and make this game a lot closer than it was. So Boise State's defense doing a great job of holding San Jose State to 2 field goals instead of 2 touchdowns, which would have changed the course that you had. So Boise State won this game by 8 points. You take the 4 points added for each of those potential touchdowns, add in the game, that's 8. This is a tied game. Boise State defense in the first half, even though it was sloppy, even though they broke down, and if you're grading the defensive performance in the first half, just like you're grading the offensive performance, it's probably getting an F. However, doing enough in the first half to keep Boise State in this, even though they gave up a lot of yards and a lot of plays. Second half, however, the biggest issue with Spencer Danielson's defense has been the inability to make the appropriate adjustments. When they've come out and played a solid first half of defense, they have not come out and played a solid second half of defense consistently. And when they've come out and they've had a bad first half, they haven't been able to really make the strong adjustments in the second half to radically change the results. This game, Boise State's defense was probably as bad as it could possibly be. Second half, Boise State held San Jose State to 0 points. Shut them out in the second half and kept them and held them to 110 yards of offense. 429 yards total offense for San Jose State, but only 110 yards of offense in the second half. Started right off the bat with 2 punts. They stopped a 4th down conversion. They had an interception. Marion McCoy had an incredible game. I was going to mention him anyway if he hadn't had the pick because of his first half play. He was really one of the strong points in the first half and coming in the second half. He had multiple great tackles when other players were missing them. He had some great open field tackles. He was great against the deep ball. He was playing great coverage. But then in the second half, he has an interception right after a Boise State touchdown. He has an interception. The momentum clearly shifting for Boise State. Boise State, of course, then goes out and ends up attempting a long field goal, missing it, partially because they ran Maddox Madsen out there on 3rd down and he fumbled the snap. But the point is, he had that interception in the second half that allowed Boise State to kill more clock and prevent San Jose State from having a long drive attempt with lots of time on the clock to come down and pull this one even. Incredible job overall, individual effort by the players, which is again an offensive trait as well with great individual effort, but defensively it's a great coaching adjustment because it wasn't just come out with the same scheme and hope it works in the second half and maybe your players play better. No, there were clear adjustments. There were more blitzes being called. The pressure was much better against the quarterback in the second half. They were doing a much better job of corralling Cordero. Overall, yeah, they allowed him for a long 3rd down run, which was kind of embarrassing on a kind of a scramble drill. But that last play of the half, that last play of the game, scramble by Cordero, they bring him down. And we saw that in the second half. Boise State doing a much stronger job in the second half in a large part because of Spencer Danielson. Amazing adjustments by him. He's been a question mark, just like Andy Avalos has been. He's been a question mark for this team. While fans should not feel any more confident in Andy Avalos after this one, there should be hope in Spencer Danielson. There should be confidence in the highest paid coordinator on the Boise State staff because he showed why he's getting paid the big bucks in this one and he made the adjustments he needed to. great individual performance as well, but also much better job adjusting with pressure on the quarterback and the coverage overall. Boise State also was doing this despite losing players. Shea Oladipo got hurt in the first half, took him a while to come back. They lost Notarani early in the first half. They were losing guys, key players. I mean, those are probably two of your best players on defense, those two guys that I just named. Both of them eventually able to come back and make big plays. Notarani on that last drive had a blitz that forced the quarterback out and put him into a bad pass. He also had a pass deflected on the second play and forced them into a third and long situation. So he came back and played huge after the injury. So there was great individual effort. But overall, this was an amazing job by Spencer Danielson. And I absolutely applaud him and his staff for making the adjustments they needed to in the second half to get Boise State their win and give this on and off again offense enough time to come back into this game and get this win for Boise State and get them to 2-0 overall in conference play. Yes, they were aided by horrible game management by the San Jose State coaching staff. No timeouts in the fourth quarter because they burned them all for reasons they shouldn't have burned them. So really a poor job overall by the coaching staff, yes, for San Jose State. However, incredible adjustments by Boise State's the defense coordinator, Spencer Danielson, and this definitely refortifies my confidence in him going through the rest of the season for this defense. So overall, even though the first half performance was horrific, the second half performance was exceptional in a large part because of the coaching staff here in Spencer Danielson. So overall defensive grade is going to be an A. Looking at the special teams, Jonah Dalmez, 0 for 1, missed the only field goal. It was a long field goal attempt. The blocked field goal probably still on his mind. It wasn't like he shanked it. He just missed it right. That was more of, again, I don't necessarily put that one on him so much as it should have been a closer field goal if you don't run a inexperienced quarterback out there who is not into the flow of the game on third down and then end up having to ground it a little bit further back because of a fumble attempt. Again, probably the right decision to kick the field goal. You can argue that back and forth. It's not like the decision versus Memphis. Missed the field goal. Unfortunate. Boise State, though, shouldn't have had to kick that field goal to put themselves up by 2 scores because after they scored the touchdown, their last touchdown of the half, which put them up by 7 at that point, instead of going for 2 to put themselves up by 2 scores and put themselves up by 9, they just kicked the extra point. And so Boise State really should have gone for 2 there to put themselves up by 2 scores and kind of put this game out of reach. Another poor coaching decision overall by the coaching staff there, by Andy Avalos in this game. However, missed field goal, whatever, it didn't end up impacting the game. James Ferguson Reynolds, again, incredible, getting back to his 50-plus yard average, 3 punts for 53.1 yards, had a long of 71, which ties the longest in recent history, tying Joel Velasquez's long of 71 yards while he was at Boise State. He did almost have one blocked, so that's something to keep an eye on. Maybe make some adjustments coverage-wise in case their opposing teams are seeing some vulnerabilities, but he got his punt away. That might have been the 71-yarder that he was able to get away, but almost a block, so keep an eye on it, but it wasn't. Great job overall. Would have had a punt right down at the 1-yard line if the coverage team had been able to get down on it. It was trickling, it was rolling, they were right there. They tried to dive to keep it at the 1. It wasn't as egregious as the 1 versus Washington, which just rolled through a coverage player's legs. However, still not a great moment there. Could have been down at the 1. It was a good punt overall. So a little bit of a pickup there by the special teams unit to get those punts down. But overall, great job by James Ferguson Reynolds. And the return game was not a factor for either team in this. So special teams overall, going to give them a solid B+. Nothing super hard to complain about. Again, the missed field goal on a long field goal with maybe a little bit of PTSD from the block still on his mind. Definitely at some point, if the game allows it, would be nice to get Joe Dalmas a nice, easy, 30 kind of yard field goal to get him back into the momentum of the season and restore his confidence moving through the rest of the year. Maybe that's something to look for, an opportunity in a game coming up for Boise State. But overall, not a bad job special teams-wise, B+. So my keys to the game, make a clear choice, F. Absolute F. Absolutely horrible decision by the coaching staff to go with the plan that they did. Was really, really hoping that after I watched the press conference and they said they were going to do this, that they were bluffing, that it was maybe a bad joke. It was not. I mean, it was a bad joke to watch, but it was not a joke. It was all horribly, horribly real. And hopefully they learned something with the way the offense ran when they were actually able to move the ball that causes them to go away from this in the future. Not holding my breath for that. Second key, butt out. Andy Avalos does not need to have say or impact on this offense. I still think he is. I mean, I can't tell for 100% certainty, but I really doubt that Bush Hamdan on his own would make the decision to do what is happening with the quarterbacks. So I'm giving an F to that grade as well. And the third play to win for Boise State, A, solid A. They should have gone for the 2-point conversion, but overall, much more aggressive, going for it on fourth down, when they could have played it safe and gone for some field goals. I mean, there was a point when they were up by 1 point and they were then technical field goal range, and they could have gone for a field goal, which is kind of what they did versus Memphis, and instead, this time, they go for it on fourth down. Ashton Jeanty hurdles a defender, gets downfield. It was an incredible job individually, but it was also a good decision by the coaching staff in that moment to go for the fourth down. So it wasn't all negatives, but it was mostly negatives offensively for Boise State as far as the decision-making goes. So what does this mean for Andy Avalos? Well, as you can tell, I am not happy by this performance. We won this game, but we won this game narrowly, and we are lucky. We are so lucky to walk away with this win. Even when Boise State was coming back, even when they were winning the game, even when it looked like the game was pretty much solidified, Boise State was still making boneheaded decisions that was causing me to absolutely lose my mind. I've never been so frustrated than I was watching this game, like I said before. I think this is it. I think that Andy Avalos has clearly shown that he has no idea how to appropriately and properly coach this team to a consistent, successful level. It's not about the record. It's not about the losses. It's not about the win-loss. We just won this game, right? It's not about the wins or the losses. It's about how we win these games. It's about the energy on the sideline. It's about what he puts out on the field. It's about the consistency for Boise State. And none of those things are happening. I think this is it. I think that Jeremiah Dickey should be drawing up a short list of potential candidates, and at the best opportunity, when it makes the most sense for a transition, looking to move on from this coaching staff. This, not the coaching staff overall. Bush Hamdan, Spencer Danielson still have opportunities to prove themselves. I think the offensive play calling overall by Bush Hamdan is great, and Spencer Danielson making the changes they need to. But at head coach, this is not the direction that Boise State should be going. I am extremely concerned, probably more concerned about the future of Boise State than I have ever been as a Boise State fan. I was devastated after the Memphis loss. I was absolutely terrified after the press conference, and I am shaking in my boots right now after this game about what the future holds for Boise State against a very tough conference schedule, but not just this year, moving forward throughout the next couple of seasons as Boise State as the group of five shifts towards a playoff spot opportunity. Whether Boise State will be in the conversation for that, I think, will depend a lot on what the athletic department does with this coaching staff and their decision making there. Now, I will say, amazing credit to Jeremiah Dickey on getting this win. Boise State packed out a stadium for a team that was 2-3, had just lost a game on the road in devastating fashion when the fan base could not be at a lower point, and we still sold out the stadium. I've seen seasons where Boise State was going to win 10 or 11 games and still couldn't sell out the stadium. The reason that they did that is not because of the team. It's not because of what was on the field. The fans were not coming because of the performance that Boise State has put up so far. This is probably one of the worst seasons so far for Boise State in recent memory. What happened, the reason fans showed up in force was because Jeremiah Dickey has made Boise State the event location to be through the incredible Laser Light Show, which, tell you what, when you're talking about momentum shifts, when you're talking about ways to mess with the defense and get your team and fan base hyped up, we scored. I believe we scored after both times that they did the blackout with the lasers. I believe after both of those, Boise State scored touchdowns on ensuing drives. What Jeremiah Dickey has done as far as making the Boise State games not just a performance from the field entertainment perspective, but an entertainment experience in and of itself, whether the team is on the field or not. It dramatically improving the menu options, some of the best food that you're going to find. I won't necessarily say that because Boise has incredible food, but also in the stadium, amazing food options. allowing for a beer to come in and making that part of the experience as well. And then just the overall management of the game to make it not just something where you're waiting for the team to get back on the field, but you're genuinely excited for the timeouts and for the ad breaks to see what happens next. When I was there for the UCF game with my daughter, it was an amazing experience, whether Boise State was on the field or not. Obviously, we lost that game, but just an incredible environment to be there, and was just we were 100% entertained in the whole game because of what Jeremiah Dickey and his staff have done for this program. So Bronco Nation, showing up the way that you did and helping the defense get back on their feet in the second half the way that you did, and Jeremiah Dickey doing what he did to help pack you in there and make this event the place it is, you are massively credited. All of you, Bronco Nation and the athletic department staff, you are massively credited for getting this win for Boise State, despite the obvious blunders and errors just in game plan development and calling throughout by the coaching staff. But despite the fact that Boise State won this game, there are a lot of questions left for the direction of this team, not just this season, but for the future. And there are going to be some major decision points coming, if not after this game. I personally, I've made my personal decision as a fan that this is not the direction Boise State should go. Obviously, my opinion doesn't matter. I'm just some guy with a camera making YouTube videos. But at some point this season, if Boise State continues to play the way they do, especially against the much better teams that are coming down their pipeline, there are going to be some losses that pile up that are going to cause a decision point. And that is going to be the point where Boise State's future gets determined, not just for this season and next season, but potentially for the next 10 years. So fingers crossed, we'll see what happens coming down the line. But while we can be positive about the win and happy that we got it, it was by the absolute skin of our teeth and absolute luck that Boise State's players were able to come out and perform despite the situation that they were put in, and the adjustments were made defensively that allowed the offense to come out and perform the way they did. So overall, mixed feelings on this one. On to the next game. Boise State 2-0 in Mountain West Conference play. Mountain West Conference title still within their achievable goals, as far as there's nothing out there preventing it except for themselves. We'll have to see what Boise State does in the future to see if they are the biggest hurdle to their Mountain West Championship goals. Thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you like, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts. This has been quite the discussion and quite the video. So let me know your thoughts on this and where Boise State should go in the future. Thanks so much for watching. And as always, go Big Blue!